So I'm just very excited to welcome everybody. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. I'm one of the co-founders of Women in Tech Global, which was an organization that we founded in 2019 that aims to build a global network of women and men, an inclusive network to kind of connect people that either want to get in tech or are already in tech and are looking to kind of grow their career and provide resources for everyone, opportunities to network, opportunities to learn, and everything always for free. That is one of our core values that we strive upon. So with that said, I will share some information about our organization in the chat, so you'll be able to kind of learn more about what we do. But one thing I just want to reemphasize, we do drive our objectives through inclusion. So although we are called Women in Tech, we welcome everybody in our community, men, non-binary, basically anybody who is interested to learn and join our community. So today I'm actually super excited because we have Lisa Zane here to talk about how to grow your career in product management. The reason why I'm very excited about this talk, and we do have, this is not our first talk, we've pretty notable speakers quite frequently. But Lisa is somebody who really captivated me in the last Grace Hopper conference. She's really somebody who left a lasting impression in me. So I reached out to her and I invited her to join us and share some more of her wealth of knowledge with us. Whether you're interested in a product management role or in that field or not, I guarantee you will get a lot out of this call because Lisa is she knows her stuff. She is founder of a company called Conscious Development, which aims to help product managers as well as early startups to kind of shape and build conscious products through providing the training, coaching, and learning opportunities. Her background is in Google. She has a lot of hardware product management experience as well as other product management experience. I'm sure I'm not giving her enough justice, but long story short, Lisa is awesome. She was definitely the person that stood out at the GHC conference that I can still remember. So just enjoying this conference and this call for free is a gift. So I just want to thank Lisa for taking some of her valuable time to be with us today. And I'm just going to pass it on to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Eva. I've never had an intro like that, so thank you for pumping my tires. So right now I'm having a kind of crazy day. I'm in my garage office / gym. It's like almost like minus 21 or something today here. I'm in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, just like an hour outside of Toronto. And I really appreciate you spending your time, whether it's your lunch hour or towards the end of the day or wherever you are, your time with me and us today. So with that, I'm going to just share my screen here. Cool. So today I'm going to be talking about creative ways to find your own product market fit. And this is drawing upon both my experience as a PM, but also my life experience. So I think most of you have probably been asked this question growing up. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm willing to bet that you've had a lot of different answers to this question. I hate this question. I think it gives kids a message that they're defined by what they do, not who they are. It doesn't leave much space for exploration and discovery. I think the way the question is asked is also very narrow. It's not who do you want to be, and it applies just one static thing in the way that it's asked. And also, like, what the heck does growing up mean? At what point do you officially become a grown up? Is it when you start driving? Is it when you leave home? Is it when you are able to vote or pay your first bill? Who knows what the actual definition is and where you cross that line? But more than anything, I hate this question because it forces kids to think in boxes, boxes that they would naturally not impose on themselves. So me, I have never fit into any boxes. This is me growing up. On the left, it's a picture with my nono, who's actually on the call today. I'm half Italian, so that means grandpa in Italian. There's a picture of my brother and I'm wearing hockey equipment, sitting in a trunk of a car, and I think on the bottom, that was my first day of kindergarten. So I had a mushroom cut in a rat tail. I loved playing sports and played competitively from a pretty young age, mostly hockey and soccer. But it was very clear to me back then that like being a professional athlete wasn't a viable career option for me because I didn't really see anybody doing it in the world when I was growing up. When I was 10 years old, I answered that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? By saying that I wanted to be a video game tester and work at a tech company. I said IBM at the time because at our elementary school, those were like the only computers that we had. And also that I wanted to be a mascot for a professional sports team. So I actually wrote an essay about this in grade 5, and my teacher graded it and wrote some comments on it. And one of the comments that I remember was that she told me that I should reassess my goals. And I was really pissed off, to be honest, when she wrote that. And I remember thinking, I don't know everything right now. I'm only 10, but I think I can prove you wrong. I also didn't know what a product manager was or what the world would be like at this point in time. So I ended up following my gut. I tried lots of different things, and I gravitated towards the things that made me excited. And along the way, subconsciously started constructing this framework to understand how these experiences made me feel and what I needed to change in my life to feel more aligned if I didn't feel aligned. So I ended up going into kinesiology, continued playing hockey, predominantly all through university. I played for 5 years at McGill University in Montreal. And I was lucky enough to win 3 national championships and play with some of the best players on the planet at the time who had been part of the women's Olympic team. And I also ended up studying ice hockey biomechanics, which is very specific and was my dream come true. So I got to work in partnership with Bauer Hockey, a major hockey equipment manufacturer, and their stick department. And I developed a piezo-resistive force sensing system, which is a really fancy way of saying we put sensors on a stick and we were able to measure how strongly players were gripping the stick and when they were taking really quick shots. And naturally from there, segued into studying journalism. So I went to Concordia University, also in Montreal. I ended up developing original content for CBC, the CrossFit Games, Discovery Channel, National Geographic. I was part of a production company, which is a wild and crazy experience for me. And I learned a hell of a lot. And as everyone knows, when you work really, really hard as a journalist, you become a product manager. So working in product, I've been almost exclusively at startups. So I've been employee number 4, 200 something, and 100,000 plus. These are some of the products that I've worked on. I was part of the North team that brought Focal, the first smart eyewear that looked like regular glasses to market. So that's on the bottom right there. And North was acquired by Google actually during the pandemic in 2020. So I joined the Google AR VR team. I also got to work during my master's with Bauer Hockey to develop hockey sticks to improve performance. I worked at a startup called Hidoko. These are the pictures on the left. It's actually me with my head cut off wearing the suit. And we developed a motion capture suit that was targeted to prevent sports and workplace injuries. And as Eva mentioned earlier, this year I founded my own company, Conscious Product Development, and I'm working on my own products, including most recently Align, which is a side product, and I'll answer any questions about that after if anyone's interested. And along the way, I've been part of a lot of different kind of startup ecosystems. So I went through District 3 Innovation Center in Montreal, and I also went through the Techstars Accelerator program, and I lived in Boston with our founders of our company. And I thought, when Eva asked me to do this, I thought, maybe it would be interesting to show some of the highlights of things that I've experienced so far. Because I've been mostly part of startups, I think I have a little bit different experience than a lot of people who join larger organizations right off the bat. So this is actually a picture taken at CES. I was wearing our motion capture suit and doing a live demo as part of so NXP was one of our suppliers, and they built this whole fake house. It was like a glass house outside of the main venue. And so all these people were walking by, and I was literally like exercising and doing different movements and having my motion kind of replicated in 3D on the screen there. And this picture was actually taken when a group of kids were on a field trip, and they were walking by and they started dancing, and they were like trying to get me to copy their dance moves. So I did. And someone took a picture at the time, which was this, but they also took a video and they posted it on YouTube, and I didn't know. So that was a pretty random and fun experience to go through. I also got to be part of the First and Future competition, where we got to pitch to the NFL, TechCrunch, and Stanford. And I got to be with the founders on stage with Condoleezza Rice and Mark Parker, who was the CEO of Nike at the time. Now he's the executive chairman. Then moving on to working at North, I got to be part of a lot of different parts of the product, which I think is also unique. I started working on our sizing and fit systems and how we do adjustments so that the glasses would fit not only for aesthetics and comfort, but also so that the user could see the display, which was a huge challenge. That migrated to the Focal showroom app, where we could actually like have the purchasing flow done remotely, retail and go-to-market systems, working on product demos, which was incredibly challenging. So the GIF on the bottom right is like what it looked like to actually see the display through the holographic lens. But it was incredibly challenging to figure out how to demo this product because you could only see it if they were on your face. So that was a cool experience to go through. And then I worked on hardware as well there. Things like the input device, which was the loop at the time, and audio. This is just some snapshots of that. So at the time, a customer would come in, they would get sized with this 11 camera setup using stereo photogrammetry, and get a 3D model made that we would then use to like fit them with virtual glasses in 3D. And this evolved into mobile showrooms in the bottom right there, where we could actually like bring this all around North America and get people kind of fitted for glasses there. Obviously, that was a bottleneck. When the iPhone 10 came out, we were able to develop and launch this Focal showroom app pretty quickly, and get people kind of to go through this whole process, but remotely. And some of the experiences I had along the way have been, so this is actually me wearing the glasses at a conference. And I took this picture because I thought the context was pretty interesting, because the people beside me were actually getting the same information on their phones that I was getting on my face. So they're all looking down and I was able to look up to take this picture. And I also was able to meet some pretty crazy and interesting people who are much smarter than me, people like Kara Swisher. I met her at a conference and she kind of said, like, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm wearing it. And this ended up evolving into us talking more, and we got her a pair of glasses and she ended up wearing them on stage, and she did a live recording of her podcast with them on, and she's fantastic. So that's been one of my highlights for sure. And so these are my shoes. This is the context that I have. It's been a very interesting and unique journey so far. As you can see, I've worked almost predominantly on moonshot types of projects, where I work with teams to create some things from nothings. But this journey has also been full of a lot of challenges and what I call life slapping me in the face moments that now I'm incredibly grateful for. So these things which were really traumatic at the time, like living through a shooting, being in a bus accident. My aunt, who was one of my family members I was closest to, was hit by a car while cycling in Toronto and killed. My partner at the time, we had been together for 8 years. Her mom she ended up getting diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died pretty quickly. And then my partner, we were on a trip and she got bitten by a tick and contracted Lyme disease, which was bilateral facial paralysis, which was like more rare than 1 in 5 million. Around the same time, like, I found out my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I ended up herniating 3 discs in my back. I was diagnosed with a genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And all of these things I'm very grateful for now because they really forced me to get my ducks in a row and figure out the most important things to me and why they're the most important things in my life. So I've changed careers several times. I'm a female PM working in tech. I'm now a business owner. I'm gay. I'm a step parent in a blended family. I have an awesome partner who's also on the call. And she's a visual and motion designer if anyone's interested, and an awesome 8-year-old bonus daughter. And I'm living with an invisible disability. And the truth is, most systems in the world weren't designed for people like me. So I've had to come up with really creative approaches and alternate ways of thinking to spend my life doing what I want to be doing. Last year, I got to a point where I really was not happy. I say last year, it was actually 2020. It feels like last year. And I was dealing with so many of like unexpected things, and I decided to think of myself like a product. And I ended up improving my situation, which I'm still doing as I speak and in the process of this, by defining my why, understanding my common underlying thread, knowing where I want to go, and owning my story. So I just wanted to touch upon like what product management means to me, because I think there's so many definitions floating around about this. But to me, to be a product manager means being a detective, a quarterback, a stitcher, an optimizer, and human first. So detective being exceptional at finding and framing problems. Quarterback being having a systematic way of finding and recognizing opportunities that should be invested in given the context. A stitcher being there's this Venn diagram that's like very often shown about being a PM that shows like product in the middle of UX, tech, and business. I think there's actually much more tentacles to that. And I think being someone who can easily connect the dots and understand how the pieces and constraints fit together is extremely important. Being an optimizer, so someone who can look at all the puzzle pieces and know where the gaps are and how to close them and how to make things more efficient. And most importantly, human first. So someone who can lead with empathy, curiosity, and creativity, and understand what problems people are facing and the right way to approach solving them. That being said, this is sort of like my take on how I approach product development, going from nothing to something. There's this foundation of, okay, what is the problem that we're solving? Who are we solving it for? How can we frame this problem really well? And then working our way up the pyramid, looking at the product vision and the roadmap, and then figuring out, okay, what processes and team structure actually fit into these things to like make these things happen. And I've been doing this with clients and with the companies that I've been working with, but I decided to kind of apply this to myself. I kind of flipped this, so it's thinking about your career as a product. I changed the wording slightly, but all the steps are the same. So I'm going to go through kind of these from the base of the pyramid up. So bear with me. We're going to start with the bottom. So finding the problem. If we want to make big things happen, it's really important that we start small and ask really basic questions that can ultimately have a dramatic impact on the design of our end solution. So questions like what's the problem? How big of a problem is it? Why is it a problem? Like these questions sound really basic and simple, but a lot of times people don't start here and they end up with solutions or spinning their wheels. And the solution that they end up with is not ideal or doesn't match what they actually need. For me, some of the things that have helped greatly in this vein have been looking inside and outside. So paying attention to how I'm feeling instead of reacting right away, trying to create some space between, okay, I just noticed this emotion, and questioning, like, why am I feeling this way? Like, what is it about this thing that triggered me? Like, why is this happening? And kind of keeping notes on those things. Asking questions like, why am I unhappy? What feels misaligned right now? What is working versus isn't working? What specifically are the problems here? What's impacting me the most? What are other people's experiences like? Going around being like a kid and talking to people and being genuinely curious to gain some perspective. I think this is a step that a lot of people skip, and it ultimately impacts the final solution that they end up with. So now we're moving up the pyramid. So number 2 is framing the problem. What does that mean? We've got, okay, this is one of my favorite quotes from Einstein. He said, if I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I'd spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it. This quote has really resonated with me. I think about it probably almost every day. And I think it's how the most elegant solutions come to life, by framing problems really well. So career-wise, looking at, okay, what's not working? Why am I feeling stuck? Why am I feeling blocked? Am I feeling like I'm on the wrong track completely? Asking questions like, what are the problems that I'm actually having right now? Like currently, why are they problems for me? Have I tried solutions to fix these problems, and have they worked or not worked? And like, what have those results looked like? What are other people experiencing, and what barriers have other people faced encountering? Have they encountered in trying to solve these problems? Where did they succeed or fail? This is an important one. Should I solve this problem now? Like, what's my timeline? Is this the right time to be solving this? And how big of a problem is it? And really where I ended up was this kind of circle of like, hey, here's who I am now, and here's where I think I want to be. But I realized that I wasn't really sure like who I wanted to be. So I did a lot of reading and soul searching, and this is just kind of like a kind of sample of some of the things that I really dug into. I highly recommend all of these books. They've been very helpful for me. There's probably like 50 other ones that would be recommended by others, but these are the ones that I started with. I started questioning what I really care about and why. What are my values? What's my purpose? What would an ideal day look like for me, or an ideal week? And I also started talking to other people who are going through similar transitions. So I ended up, I don't know if any of you have seen The Social Dilemma, the documentary on Netflix. I watched that, and I was really moved by it, and I ended up contacting like all the people that were interviewed, and I asked them if they would be open to like a one-on-one call, and I literally just cold messaged them, and some of them responded, and I had calls with them, and those conversations were extremely helpful. I also watched a documentary about people that had made big life changes, and something that someone said in that documentary really stood out. They said, Notice when you feel contracted versus expansive. So when you walk into a room or you're in a situation and you feel like completely yourself and you can be expanded versus feeling guarded and like contracted. And along those lines, I love this story. So 6 years ago, it was Princess Week at a dance school in North Carolina. All the dancers dressed up like their favorite princesses, but Ainsley here on the left decided to dress up like a hot dog. And when they asked her why she dressed up as a hot dog, she responded, "Because it's my favorite costume." So I think this story just really speaks to being able to find and create an environment where you can be yourself. I think not enough people do this or even think about this or just accept the status quo. Set yourself up so that you can perform optimally and constantly improve in the ways that you want to improve, where you feel safe physically, mentally, and emotionally, and in a way that you can feel like you can be the best version of yourself. So the main message here is, in a world full of princesses, dare to be a hot dog. And what are the things that make you feel like you can be a hot dog if you need to be a hot dog? Now, working our way up the pyramid, we've got now, what is your purpose? What's your North Star? On a company level, questions to ask as a company or a team, or like, what's the reason your team exists? What's the reason our company exists? What value are you adding for who? I think these can all be applied to your own career. What is your why? What do you believe in? What's the reason you do what you do? And some examples from a company perspective are Google. Google's purpose being to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. LinkedIn, to connect the world's professionals and make them more productive and successful. And NASA, to advance and communicate scientific knowledge and understanding of the Earth, the solar system, and the universe. And I think these things can be applied to your own life, and I'll show you mine in a second. But before I get there, I wanted to share this story. I had been kind of going through this hard time and sharing my experiences with my friends, and my best friend Siobhan sent me this TED Talk. She's a teacher, and it's by J.P. Mitchell, and in it, Mitchell talks about a different approach to figuring out what do I want to be when I grow up. Rather than focus on what you want to do and pick one thing for the rest of your life, choose a problem that you really care about solving, and then look at the skills that actually feed into that problem and the impact that's aligned with this. This provides more room to grow in unrestricted ways. So to me, this is a perfect answer to the question, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because it gives you the room for self-discovery and the room to collect information and adapt. Make a list and prioritize what these things are for you. I created this tool to help with that. This is available on my website, consciousproductdevelopment.com. But asking questions like, what are you the most moved by and why? Like, are you really into what's happening with the environment and do you want to help solve those problems? What about our healthcare system? Vaccines, transportation, access to food, mental health. There's so many like things in the world that like aren't in a great state, and what can you do to make those things better? I think a lot of people kind of go where the money is, but I really am a strong believer that we should shift our thinking to figuring out what problems we want to focus our energy on solving as a first step. So my why right now, and I want to iterate that because this will probably change as I grow and learn and adapt, but right now my why is to help teams solve the right problems for the right reasons and develop products that make people's lives better. So I work, as Eva mentioned before, with product managers and early stage startups to develop more conscious products through coaching, writing, and building operational tools and resources. Now, once you've got that purpose, kind of at least an iteration of it, doesn't have to be perfect. Looking at, okay, now I know where I kind of want to go, but like, how do I know if I'm doing the right thing? How do I know I'm on the right track? For me, this looks very specific, and I'll talk about that in a second. But what does it mean for you? How do you define your goals? There's a great article that I'll share. I created a resource list that I'll share in the chat after I get off. And I think we might be able to email it to all of you as well. This woman decided to spend a year kind of tracking her goals based on her values and the percentage of time that she spent in direct alignment with her values. And I thought that was a really unique take on goal setting, but you can do this in so many ways. OKR, SV2 moms. I think it's important to start with a small number and make them easy to measure. So you're not, it's a very low lift exercise. And this helps you measure your progress to know, okay, am I on track or not? So you can adapt quickly. Also helps you communicate your goals and create more alignment in your life. I know I'm kind of going through these, and I could probably spend a whole presentation talking through each one, but I want to focus on kind of the framework and overview and go into any questions you have after after I get off here. So your vision, what what is the future that you are trying to create? This should be ambitious, emotional, and meaningful. It should leverage your skill set and the things that you naturally gravitate towards. You should think about things like what's your end game, and what are you going to do every day contributing to this larger goal. Whether you're someone who wants a director role, or you want to be, not managing people and just want time to focus and do heads down work so you can really excel what you're good at. Or maybe you're in a position where you want to invest in companies that are solving problems that are really meaningful to you. Whatever it might be, I think taking some time to like envision this, and you can communicate this however you want. You can put a deck together for yourself, which is what I do because I'm nerdy, and that's how I kind of like make things more operational. You can meditate on it. There's so many like ways you can actually do this that work for you. One concept that I wanted to talk about comes from Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. They wrote Design Your Life and Design Your Work Life. I highly recommend both of these books. Got a comment saying I totally, yes, Eva, amazing. I'm glad I'm not alone. So they talk about this concept of like this mixed board. So like in audio engineering, you've got all these kind of like levers that you can pull to like change the sound. And you've got three levers. You've got money, impact, and expression. And you can kind of combine those things as you want in whatever way works for you, but that means you're going to make decisions in a certain way. So for me, this is what mine look like right now. I didn't obviously do the math properly with the way these are measured, but it's kind of like an equal balance of all three. And my partner, Rachel, she brought up an interesting point for her. She wants to have a gas pedal and a brake. So in some points in a year, she wants to be able to really like, make money. And then other points in the year, she wants to focus on expressing herself. So I thought that was a really interesting way of like explaining it, and something to think about when you're thinking about like what your vision looks like and what the ideal situation looks like for you. And now you've got that vision painted, so that's the what. But what about the how? That's the strategy. So how do we go from this kind of like chaotic Tupperware container full of Lego to like a nicely built structure? There's a great article on this by Marty Kagan that I've included in the resource list that I talked about. But how are you actually going to accomplish this goal? For me, what this looked like, and again, this is not perfect, this is just where I started. I started with a kind of four-pronged approach. So a 360 feedback to understand, okay, where am I actually at right now? And I wanted to validate some of my assumptions about myself. I'll show you an example of how I did this on the next slide. Drafting a North Star set of skills. So looking at, okay, who are the people that are doing what I want to be doing? And then looking at things like job postings, looking at their background, reading about it, looking at, okay, these are the skills that seem to be overlapping across the board, and having a clear idea of what those things look like. And then looking at the difference between, okay, well, here's where I'm at right now, here's where I want to be, what are those gaps, and just making a list of those things to flag them. And then something else that's really important to me is I have been traditionally like someone who's been go, go, go. As you can probably tell by my cadence of speaking, I get really excited about things. And I really have had to make an effort to be conscious about the time I'm spending doing things and the time I'm spending debriefing to actually question, okay, like what did I get out of that? Was it the right fit? So I've been focused on creating these kind of like 3 to 6 month blocks of projects that I've been working on, so that I have some time in between to think, okay, I just did this consulting contract for 3 months. How did I feel about it? What went well, what didn't? And then using that information to adjust course as I need to. So this is kind of a sample from a guide that I created around how to define your career North Star. That's also available on my website. But I basically started by asking these questions to my friends and family and colleagues. So I had kind of like this holistic view of like, okay, here's me now. I asked my grandparents, my parents, I asked some of my best friends, and then work-wise, I asked a variety of stakeholders to kind of get like more of a slice that was representative. So questions like, when have you seen me the most energized or the most happy? What do you think my natural strengths are? When have you seen me really frustrated or had my energy taken away? And then on the work side of things, what am I doing that I should keep doing? What am I doing that I should stop doing? And what could I be doing more of? And I consolidated all of this into like one master document. And it was really telling because I could see like everything that overlapped. Once you've got that view and that strategy, looking at pillars is incredibly important. And I think a lot of people skip this step both in product development and personal development. What are pillars? They're called tenets, principles, a whole bunch of other things. But they're basically a description of like the nature of what you do, what you believe in, and the things that you think are most important. And they're really helpful because they can help reduce decision fatigue, make decisions much quicker, because you can literally have like a kind of in and out of scope conversation with yourself very quickly, versus having to spend a ton of time doing research and investigating to be like, oh, I don't know, like, does it actually look like something I should be doing or not? And in the product world, these types of things like reduce like meetings substantially, and like churn, and a whole lot of other domino effects that can happen. So I think personally, it's a great idea to look at doing this. How do you actually do this? This is a great example from Ethan Eisman, who's the VP of Slack. So these are some of Slack's principles or pillars. And I thought the way they wrote them was very simple, very clear, and I love this. And I kind of took this and ran with it for my own pillars. I obviously went into a little bit more detail, but things like starting with the root problem. The best way to get started is to start small. A person's primary task should be being human. Technology should not be the default solution. The form that the solution comes in should depend on the problem and who it impacts. And I basically came up with these to help govern like the decisions that I'm making about projects that I want to be involved with, and people that I want to work with. And now we get to the juicy part, the roadmap. So like, okay, we've got all this stuff lower down in the pyramid, and now we get to the actual map. How are we going to light the way for ourselves? How can we make this tangible, realistic, and honest, and have the right guardrails in place so we know how to get to where we want to go? What is the path? What will it take to get there? What do my guardrails look like? What are the key challenges that I need to overcome? Like, answering these questions are crucial to help figure out, and I'll show you on the next slide kind of how I approach doing this. But the most important question, I think, is how can I learn as quickly as possible to turn the unknowns into knowns? I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, both in their lives and career-wise, because it's scary. It's scary to not know what's happening, what's around the corner. But if you can come up with creative ways to figure out what those unknowns actually look like, or at least understand a little bit more about them, they can help those decisions become a lot more clear. So this is pulled out of a resource that I created in that North Star template guide that I talked about earlier. But when you're putting together a roadmap, I'm a huge fan of the now, next, future, or now, next, later format, where the things that are like in the now are the items in the roadmap that are like, okay, I have a very good idea of what these things look like. They're very well defined. The risk is fairly low. And in the future or later, kind of the longer term, things are a little bit more abstract. They maybe have a little bit more risk because you still have to define them and clarify them and understand what they mean. And then in the middle, you've got kind of an in-between of like, okay, I have a little bit better idea what this looks like now, but I still need to do more investigating to more fully define it. But when you're putting this together, they should always be tied to what are you doing, why are you doing it, and how does this tie into your purpose, goals, and vision? And if you're doing this for your career, it's like, okay, well, here's where I am now, here's where I want to be, and what are the actual like tangible steps that I'm going to take to get there. I put this kind of last thing in at the bottom. This is sort of a snapshot of the way that I think about it for myself, which is a little bit like weird and abstract, but I'm in a stage now where I'm really trying to validate a lot of my ideas. I'm doing some new things, and I want to make sure that I'm putting my efforts in the right places before I invest considerable time and energy into them. And then I want to look, okay, now I've got a better sense of these things. I want to create more value. I want to create more content and scale these things. And then my future vision is to work on more solopreneur projects and projects that are either self-funded or receive funding from investors that I'm kind of very aligned with in terms of values, that I can work on. They're bigger problems to solve that will take more than a couple of months. So for me, those are my bigger bets. Whether you're listening to this and you're a PM or you're not a PM, I highly recommend this article by Andrea Says. This is probably the best article I've ever read on roadmaps so far. So if you're kind of looking into, okay, how do I tangibly like put this into action? This is a great place to start, and it's in the resource list that will be shared. Okay, so team structure is on this list also. Why is this here? If I'm working on my career, why do I need a team? it makes more sense in product development where you're working with like a cross-functional team to bring something to market. But on your own, and when you're looking at what you want to do next, I think it's super important to figure out how to create your own team, how to build a team of people around you where you can feel aligned with these people. So I have made a huge effort to try to align myself with others that are doing the same thing or doing the thing that I want to be doing soon. And I literally have connected with them totally cold in so many different ways on Twitter, LinkedIn, through my blog. There's so many like ways to do that now with tech, and don't be scared to do that because it helps. It's like the greatest life hack of them all. It helps you avoid so many obstacles and headaches that you would have kind of encountered by default. And then finally, looking at the process, what does this actually look like in the vein of career development? I think when you look at processes for product development, there's all these different processes that exist for kind of iterative development to move towards your North Star. So there's like design thinking, there's Scrum, there's Kanban, there's the sprint methodology, there's Shape Up by Basecamp. But all of these things ultimately have this like overlying kind of thread that weaves everything together, which is constantly building, testing, and learning to like improve your understanding in a particular area so that you can build, test, and learn things that are even better. And looking at, okay, what's the why here? This applies to not only developing products, but also developing your career. What are the needs that we want to validate? What are the assumptions that we have? What are the hypotheses? How can we do a pre-mortem to assess risks upfront and address those risks before we invest any more effort and energy into these things? You can do that for your career just as you would for building a product. And then looking at the what's the actual plan and strategy to get there? And then the how can you actually execute on this and adapt and change course as you need to, so you're continuing to like work towards your North Star, and the metrics that you're using are letting you track where you're at in comparison to your North Star. So in summary, here's a quick recap of these 10 steps. Problem finding at the base, making sure that your problem is clearly framed, having that purpose defined, at least as an initial iteration, and then you can build off of it for your North Star. What does success look like to you, and how can you know if you're on the right track or not with performance metrics? Your vision, strategy, how do you actually do the what that your vision defines? Your pillars, what's most important to you and why? Your roadmap, the actual path to get there, and how do you light the way, and what are your guardrails? What do you do when? Your team, how are you aligning yourself with other people doing the same thing or something that you want to be doing or learn more about? And then ultimately, what's your process? How do you kind of create those iterative loops? I think on the process front, the Design Your Life and Design Your Work Life books by Dave Evans and Bill Murdett are like the #1 place that I would go to like figure out processes around that, because they teach a course at Stanford where they apply design thinking to your life basically, and they're just extremely helpful. And with that, just wanted to say a huge thank you. My parting words are, don't take yourself too seriously. Life's really short, so take time to explore and discover what really works for you, to learn and grow. And if you can do this and be authentically you, you've got this. And before we get into the Q&A, just wanted to mention I have a weekly newsletter if you'd be interested in joining. I send it out usually every Thursday and Friday. I've got a bunch of resources available on my website that you can download, some of which are free. Got a job finding tool if you're interested in looking for especially sustainable kind of jobs or jobs in education or health. I partner with Lisa Zane, who started topstartups.io here. So you can go there and use these filters to like find work that is meaningful for you. It's a great tool. And I really appreciate the time that you're spending with me now and would love to stay connected. So here are my handles for everything. So I'm pretty active on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I write regularly on Medium, and there's my website there. So Eva, I will hand it off to you and anybody else who has any questions. I'm kind of paying attention to the chat, and I'm gonna put my, here we go, come back on video.
Awesome. Wow. As always, you did not disappoint. I have to say, this conversation, this talk was so thought-provoking for me personally, and I'm sure for everybody on the call. You all make our lives seem very boring, with your experience, but definitely I have to say, not once during your talk I started wondering, should I be revised? Should I be kind of rethinking what I'm doing, right? And because I think sometimes what we do, especially in the corporate life that we all live and experience, we kind of go into a kind of uh, I don't know how to say it. It's like a auto control, where you're just kind of going with the flow. And then one day you wake up and you realize that you don't remember what you've done in the last year. So I just really love, I think these conversations are conversations we need to have more frequently with ourselves. And I'm so glad that you're here to remind us and to share some of your frameworks on how to get there and how to achieve that balance and more healthy relationship with work and with what your goals and values are. So I know that there's probably a ton of questions. I saw a lot of positive feedback. I think Vera mentioned that this was the highlight of her day. So very good. I have to say it's the highlight of my day as well. I really enjoyed this talk personally. I did send a screenshot of your information, the ways how you can connect with Lisa. So this is in the chat, and I've had the chance to look at the resource list. So make sure you get that when she uploads in the chat. Make sure that you take advantage of it. It's literally the best resource list I have ever seen in my lifetime in any kind of presentation or conference. It is something I will keep for a very long time. So thank you so much for taking the time. And I'll open the stage for questions. You can feel free to either unmute yourself, just raise your hand, and I can call on you, and you can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can post them in the chat, whichever. So I see Vera.
Hi, Lisa. Well, first off, I want to say thank you so much. That was honestly so informative, and I really loved like the slides, like the information you presented as well as the slides. I'm a current like product manager, but I'm also a student working with like multiple startups, and I actually kind of got into the field this summer. I'm also a cognitive science major with a computer science and design emphasis. And so I'm still very, very new to the field of product and like product design as well. And I'm just really curious. You definitely do have a lot of experiences, and it was really interesting hearing about like where you came from and your background. And I was just curious, what are some mistakes that you or other people have made when it comes to, I guess, getting into the product management field or becoming a product manager, and like what advice would you give towards like making those mistakes?
Yeah. First of all, great to meet you. Your background is wicked and like so varied, and I think that's a huge advantage. Also, to Eva's point earlier, this is the best part of my day so far too. So thanks for being here. I think before, when I first became a product manager, my experience is like a little bit weird because I actually like said yes to becoming a product manager before I even knew what it was. I literally like was at a startup. I joined as the biomechanics lead, and then I got asked by the founder, do you want to be our product manager? Because we didn't have one. And I literally like went to my desk and Googled like, what is a product manager? And I was like, I wish that I knew more about it before saying yes. So that was a mistake that I made. I think also like I felt this like need to like because in so many different stages of my life, I felt people doubted me or were like constantly questioning me. Like I've always looked younger than I actually am. Or like people thought that like I've made assumptions without actually knowing me. And so I felt like I had to do a lot to like overcome those things right off the bat. So the biggest mistake I made early on is I thought that I just had to basically do like a vomiting of like, here's all the context that I have, and here's everything that I've done so that you can like now trust me or like get me in, or that kind of thinking. And I think that in hindsight, what I should have done and what I ended up doing years later, kind of through a lot of trial and error, was kind of really thinking hard about, okay, well, I've made all these decisions in my career, just like you've had so many different experiences, but like, what's the underlying thread that weaves them all together? And like, how can you, like, what is your unique value proposition that you bring into your product management role or like whatever role you have? That is the thing that you should start the conversation with. And like, I feel like I had that pyramid shown, like I was kind of inverted. Like it was like, I was trying to tell everything right off the top instead of starting with like, okay, here's my unique value proposition, here are my superpowers, and then like getting into more details. And then like in the actual role, I think that the biggest mistake that I made was I thought that I had to be perfect all the time. And like I think it's really challenging when you're a product manager because like especially coming from like a research world, like you can't really make that many mistakes in research. Like it's like you have to be solid, and you can learn and experiment, and that's great. But like in a product role, I just thought I had to know everything all the time because people were looking to me to make decisions. And the challenging part of being a PM, I think, is that you have to do a lot of your learning in public, and you have to figure out ways to like own your mistakes and be okay with that. Like it took me a really long time to kind of resolve that within myself to say, okay, like I'm gonna try my best, and it's not gonna be perfect. And as long as I show that I'm like learning and like listening to the team and being empathetic and like have a very clear idea of like where we're headed, like it doesn't matter if I make some mistakes. Like I have to deal with them really well. That's the thing I should be focused on. I think early on I was very hard on myself, and I think a lot of PMs are. I'm coaching clients right now who are going through the same thing. They're like, I'm freaking out. Like everybody's asking me to like decide all these things. I don't even like. I don't. I'm not a subject matter expert in this area because like I just joined the company, and so it can be very challenging. But like the best way to like get the confidence and to like be able to get to a point where you feel like, okay, I got this, is like by going through all these like crazy kind of more abstract situations and like figuring out your own ways to like come up with, you know, you look at what's overlapping, you figure out how you've approached solving problems before and like what's worked and what hasn't, and then you bring your unique style into that to help teams in your way. And I think getting more reps, unfortunately in a public way, often helps with that. And then the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, and then you can supplement that with resources in your own learning and mentoring and things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. That was super insightful. And I'm just really curious to hear, like, just really quick, how do you navigate between, like, I know a lot of PMs work with like engineering and design team. Like, if you're not really in engineering, like you don't really have an engineering background, how do you go about like kind of understanding, you know, all of the lingo and what they talk about?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. It obviously depends on like the problem space that you're in. I think in some PM roles, especially like technical product manager roles, like you've got to be an expert in those things to be able to do your job well. And in other areas where like maybe it's not, I don't want to say not as technical, but like maybe it's a piece of software that is fairly straightforward, or something that doesn't come with like a million like technical unknowns that you now have to navigate. I think that it's really helpful to actually come from a different background that's not engineering, because it forces you by default to focus on the user first, which I think is the thing that sometimes is missing when engineers become PMs, because they're kind of very used to kind of starting in the solution space versus the problem space. And then I think there's a lot of really great resources. Lenny Rachitsky wrote this article basically explaining like, you know, here's what you need to do on a like basic technical level, like to make sure you're kind of like you hit the bar as a PM. I'll add that. I'll try to find this after. And Vera, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'll send you that article after we get off. But I think that understanding how things connect, understanding the big questions like what could this impact, what is the impact, bringing the engineering team or the technical lead, whoever you're working with, in early in the process and having regular one-on-ones with them. So like it's not going to work if you're completely on a different planet. Like you've got to kind of figure out how to align, and like even if you speak different languages, you have to understand how to find a common language. And understand like the ultimate impact to like the product that you're in the process of developing or conceiving, and then how to deal with that after it's launched. And I think doing those things and bringing people in early in the process can help greatly, because not only does it help to, you know, oh, I didn't even think about adding this thing to the roadmap, or all this tech debt that like is unaccounted for that we need to like now bring into the roadmap. But I think it also helps you figure out how to think like an engineer by having those regular conversations.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate it, and I'd love to connect after. Thank you again.
Yeah, please, yeah, send me an invite on LinkedIn or Twitter, whatever. But yeah, great to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's great to meet you as well.
Awesome. Yeah, this was great feedback. One thing, just kind of to add on and summarize, I think don't identify yourself with your level of experience and how many years you've worked as a PM or in the industry at all. Because I think that we all bring unique perspectives. And as a PM, you need to embrace a leader mindset from the get-go. And that's why what Lisa is talking about is so important, because we always have to challenge the status quo, and we always have to think of, are there any non-conventional paths that we can take for this solution? One of the, I guess, disadvantages from having years of experience is because we adopt certain way of doing things and we stop asking these questions, and we need to continue to ask these questions, the hard questions, on an ongoing basis. So this is a way that you can immediately have an impact in a role, no matter your level. So. Awesome sauce. I think we have 5 minutes, so we do have time for one more question if anybody is interested.
Also, just wanted to say I shared the resource list in the chat. I just sent the link to the doc, so if you don't have access now, I'll grant it immediately after the call.
And I mean, if there are no other questions right now, we've shared Lisa's contact information. We've also shared the Women in Tech Global ways to connect with us. We do have a YouTube channel, we have a Medium blog, we have Instagram, basically everything. And we do have very frequent events. We try to bring you notable speakers such as Lisa. We actually really curate our speakers. We focus on quality over quantity here. And so you can always trust that our events will bring you this level of quality. And I'm so thankful Lisa took time of her day. I am a fan, like 120% first fan over here. So would love to gather some feedback. And if there is any interest for future events like this, please reach out. We'd love to see more of you. And I see that there is some interest for networking event. We've done some networking events in the past successfully. With the new hybrid environment, we've actually kind of dropped our boundaries, so now we can extend to more people geographically. So we're very excited, and stay tuned to follow us on our social media and stay tuned for future events.
Thank you so much for having me, Eva, and everybody for joining today. I hope you have an awesome rest of your Friday.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and have a great weekend. And make sure you check out the resource list. Chat later.